Welcome to another episode of Talking with Kevin and Son. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our featured sponsor today is The Borough, located at 149 East Lancaster Avenue in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. The Borough is a two-level sports bar restaurant offering a multitude of experience, with the lower level featuring a casual sports bar vibe, the upstairs aiming at more of a high-end nighttime outing with someone that you're trying to impress or someone that you care for. Enjoy a night out with our friends and family, and say hello to my good friends TJ and Keith, both co-owners, and shake hands with the executive chef, which happens to be my co-host Theo McLemore, which is the executive chef at the Borough in Downingtown. So, Talking with Son, the show was to uncover the secrets of success or people you should know. And today is no different. Our mission is to give power to our voice, inspire, share, let me back up. Give power to your voice, inspire, share stories. Our purpose is hope, helping other people every single day. Today's guest, he is a powerful speaker, he's an entrepreneur, and he's a master storyteller. My guest has overcome loss, addiction, and homelessness. And today he has returned to the shelter that helped him. He has earned a degree and built a successful marketing agency. The message is small things that are consistent or microshifts create a massive change. Today, let me introduce my good friend from Ohio. We're both Browns fans, and please don't hate on us for that. Let me introduce Nicholas. And I'm not even going to try to screw up your name because I had it on my tongue earlier, and I'm not even going to do it. I'll let you give your full name. Nick, how are you doing today? Volinchak, I think that's how I did it.
You did it. We crossed the bridge. We got here. You pronounced it perfectly. But Kevin, I'm doing great. I do have one question to ask you though. The chef
Yes.
will wash their hands before they prepare my food if I shake his hand, right?
My chef will definitely
Okay.
do it. My son went to culinary school. He is a gifted chef at this restaurant. And matter of fact, the restaurant is beautiful. It's nothing like it in King of Prussia area, in the Philly area, or the Downingtown area. It's something that's totally unique. It's very upscale and it's fun. It's huge. So yeah, Theo will definitely shake your hand or pound you up if nothing else.
I think I'm gonna go to that area this year. As you can tell, I'm wearing my Yo Ho Ho t-shirt. I'm a huge Christmas fan. And we still like going to the malls. And there's less and less of them because, people don't necessarily enjoy that experience, or a lot of people as they're like growing up are just used to the immediacy and convenience of just being able to order off of Amazon. But we love going to see the malls decorated at Christmas time. And King of Prussia, I think, is the second biggest mall in the United States behind the Mall of America. So it has been on the bucket list. So we're going to try to make it out there. And if we do, I'm going to make sure to stop by and tell them you sent me.
Well, I will tell you this. If you make it up this way to King of Prussia Mall, you're 10 minutes away from me. I will personally dine with you at the Borough in Downingtown, and have my son come out and shake your hand personally as he serves us. My son is a master chef, so that will be well. We have so many things in common. Both of us celebrate the same team, the
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns. We have our issues as far as what they should and shouldn't do. I mean, that's what fans do. We don't suffer the same pain they do every single Sunday, but we celebrate their victories and their loss always too. So, Nick. And thank you again. Les, for our viewers looking at you in your whole shirt, give us some background of this shirt because I want to give a shout out to the people that you're supporting.
Yeah, there's a clothing company around us called the Youngstown Clothing Company, obviously because they're from Youngstown, Ohio. They take a great sense of pride in their community, and their shirts are very comfortable, and they have a lot of different, all of the shirts they do are somehow Youngstown area related. Youngstown has a big Italian population, so they've really kind of dived into a lot of that culture. We've had Ray Boom Boom Mancini, who is a famous boxer, several pizza creators that kind of became big in the region are from Youngstown. And so it just plays on a lot of the traditions, the fair, the festivals, a lot of things that people grew up with around here. And I'm really very passionate about this area. I was born at a time well past where Youngstown was in its heyday, right? Youngstown was a big steel town, and really, I think 60s and 70s, and maybe even earlier than that, it kind of all started to shut down, and there wasn't anything that came in to take its place of an equivalent, hourly rate to the people who work there. So this area has definitely seen some trying times, and I see a lot of, this has been also a big brain there used to be there's a term and I can't think of what it is, but people tend to, grow up here and then leave, brain drain. And I see more people trying to stay around here because they share the same kind of passion I do about the good parts of Youngstown. And it's good to see some of the things like the Youngstown Business Incubator, which has incubated a lot of different local businesses that are starting to go on to do big things. And so it's just my way of being able to show support and have that attachment to my hometown when I go on podcasts and speak. Yes, I would wear something like this on a stage, depending on who I'm talking to, because I like to feel comfortable and I'm transparent and authentic. And nothing says being transparent and authentic than being a 41-year-old in the middle of June wearing a Christmas t-shirt.
That's funny. And we're going to add an ambassador to Youngstown, and the city council should be sponsoring you. And thank you for being loyal and true to your community. But the reason why we have you on the podcast today is because you have a story to be told. You and I had talked off camera, talking about mental illness. We had talked about our shared story of being homeless. We're going to talk about how you overcame loss, how you dealt with addiction, how you ended up working for the shelter that helped you. So, my first question to you is, let's fall back a little bit and talk about your story. And I had titled this show, No Matter How Far You Have Fallen or How Stuck You Feel, the next chapter of your life is still waiting for you to be written. So let's go back before the story today and how your story was being written for you when you were out of control. Where did all this start?
Yeah, I think when you look at me by all of the demographics, I would have fallen into a bucket of not the type of person you expected to be telling a story like this. We have a way of trying to label individuals as a culture at being high risk for something or they're in too good of a location or whatever it might be. But genuinely, I, I I shouldn't have gone through what I went through. I had all of the advantages. For the first 8 years of my life, those advantages were completely normal. I had a mother, father, a great family. Everything on the surface would indicate that I was set up for success. And just in the blink of an eye, we take a trip to Niagara Falls in right around Labor Day '92, and when we come back, my mother, who had just gotten a hysterectomy in May, which feels like an odd thing to mention, but I need to for the context of the story. And when they did those back then, they had to like fully scan you to make sure you were like well enough to have the procedure. Okay, no problem. You're all good. You're fine. Well, less than 4 months later, she's unable to stand up. They take her to the doctor. The doctor's like, "Yeah, I can't do anything about that, really. I mean, I'm a doctor. You need to go to the ER." And by the end of that night, we had gotten the diagnosis that not only did she have cancer, but like it was spread throughout her whole body, and that was it. She had a matter of weeks or at most months that she was able to live. And like I said, that was right around Labor Day, so let's call it like September 10th. By October 25th of 1992, she passed. And it was a very sudden situation. And I have had, and I mean this seriously, and think about this as you're raising your kids. I had the disadvantage of being observably smarter than most people around me. And I got told this a lot in my life, and we can kind of go into why I tell people not to do that with their kids. But I had a very good understanding of what just occurred. At 8 years old, I wasn't wondering, where's mommy? Is mommy coming back? I knew my mom was dead. I knew that this was finality. I knew that how we were going to live as a family after this was going to be way different than what it was before. And I remember still to this day when my childhood ended, and I'm sitting on the bed with my brother and sister who had just 4 days before turned 5 years old, and my father who's 6'2", hardworking man. He was a big guy, probably 225. I tell him all the time he's not bigger than I am. I've gotten to be bigger than him, and he needs to remember that. Um, but he was a big guy and tough, tough as nails, and he is just bawling like a baby. And I had the priest is telling me, you're going to have to grow up and help your dad because he needs to be able to go to work and your brother and sister need to be taken care of. Now, that is something in hindsight the priest probably shouldn't have said because we had a family structure around us. I had grandparents, I had cousins, I had aunts. There was a huge amount of support and infrastructure there to take care of us, but I felt that duty that's what I needed to do. And that is when my childhood ended. At 8 years old, going on 9, I searched for identity, and that's not uncommon, right? When you're in you hit the double digits, I think you start thinking about like, who am I in this big world around me? How do I fit in? And especially as you enter your teenage years, your formative years, and head into high school, that's where I was. I had things that I loved. I loved professional wrestling. I loved sports. I obviously loved Christmas, but things were not progressing how I really thought they would. And I'm from an era where the movies that came out were American Pie, Can't Hardly Wait, Clueless. So you see this very clear picture of like what high school is supposed to be like. And here I am sitting in a basement with 7 other dudes playing GoldenEye on N64, wondering to myself, like, is this really what my high school experience and is this what life is going to look like? We're not hanging around with the girls. We're not good at talking to girls. We've put ourselves in a position to become outcasts. And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, I go to school and I talk to people and I get along with people, and then I come here and just waste myself away playing video games and just doing weird stuff. And I decided, like, okay, I'm going to start going to parties and I'm going to start, immersing myself into that lifestyle. And I started to drink and I started to smoke. And then before long, I was addicted to Xanax. And before long after that, I was addicted to Vicodin. Then I was addicted to Coke. And then I was addicted to Oxy. And all of a sudden, you go from this situation where you're having fun, man. You're living the life. Everything's so fun. You're going a mile a minute. You're going to parties. You're hooking up with girls. Everything is exactly what you thought it would be. But then one morning you wake up and you're like, dang, I can't get out of bed. I need something in me to get out of bed. And that's where stuff started to fall apart. And, leaving out some of the details because this is getting a little bit long. But
No,
by the
go
time,
ahead. Go back to the details because my listeners need to know the
okay.
details. I don't want you to summarize
All
anything. We
right,
have plenty of
perfect.
time.
So I effectively built what I'm trying to do now around the concept of microshifts. What that means is there are three kind of small innocuous conversations that took place where at the time they didn't mean much, but as I sat back and looked at them like later on that day or weeks, they like felt heavy on my soul and ended up being the points in my life where they caused real actual change. Because you got to understand, as I tell my stories and talk to people, they're always like, well, what were the moments that like really made big change in your life? Like your mom dying, ending up at a homeless shelter. And you're like, yes, very obviously the terrible outlier things that happened played a huge role in how things unfolded in my life, but it was really some of those smaller instances that really paved the way for me to get where I need to go. So by the time I was 21 years old, I had tried to come off of drugs myself, and I went back to live with my dad, but I stole everything I could from him. And I woke up one morning with my dad laughing at me and the police there with a restraining order. So they got me out of the house and off the property. And so I was now living in my Grand Am GT, 97 Grand Am GT, which I bought for myself with my graduation money. I was sleeping in Walmart parking lots and just like totally done with life. And then one morning I woke up and I thought to myself, like, it's time. You're not, this existence is not worth living. So it's time to just get out of here. And I'm not the type, I'm a coward in the sense that like I'm not going to slit my wrist. I'm not going to, you know, use gun violence or anything severe on myself. It has to be something that would almost be like something I could try to do on accident. And once it starts happening, I can't undo it. So I get up this idea in Canfield. There's a long road that goes into a bunch of like windy snake S like turns. So I drink about a bottle, half a bottle of vodka and drive around till I could feel like I'm drunk, right? And I decide I'm going to just slam the gas, go as fast as I can up this road, and then once I hit the first turn, I'm just going to whip the wheel because I'm going to be going fast enough that once I turn it, it's going to spin out of control. And so I worked up, I probably drove a few times and thought about doing it and couldn't, but I finally worked up the courage or stupidity. I don't know the right word to describe it, but I slam on the gas and I'm going. And I see the first turn coming. And I had this weird sense of peace over me that, like, you're going to do this and all your pain is going to go away. So I cut the wheel as quickly as I could, and this is in January, so it might have been icy. If not, it's like all of this, whatever. Cut the wheel, and the car goes airborne because right alongside of it are two, not really steep, but there are two ditches where there's a bunch of trees. And I remember the car spinning, and I felt free because I felt like whatever came next was finally going to put my pain at rest. Well, I am apparently the luckiest unlucky person that could possibly be because physics were my friend that day. And I don't know how, but the way that my car hit the tree is it hit it like it hit like a series of three thinner trees all at the same place, all at the same time. So the trees kind of like fully absorbed the punishment. It did crack the rear passenger window, but otherwise it hit the ground and then I shot up because in all of this happening, I still have my foot on the accelerator. So when the car lands, it just jumps out. And I'm sitting there facing the opposite direction I came from, my heart just going 100 miles a minute. And you would think that I'm setting up to talk about how that specific moment was one of those micro shifts, but it wasn't. I drove away from that and was just like, well, I guess I'm not supposed to die. Time to go get high. And I left the scene, drove not much further past that, and then eventually ran out of gas on a busy road in Campfield. So I pulled over, looking through my phone. I'm laughing at myself because even if I had a phone that worked, not a single person who I would have called would have picked up the phone to talk to me, right? No one was, I had done something wrong to every one of these people in my phone book. No one had time for me. So I went and stood outside the car, and it was like a perfect imagery of how I felt the world was for me right now. That people just passed by, didn't give a second look, no one cared, and it just felt like the world was passing me by. And then all of a sudden, probably 15 minutes into me just kind of standing there, I saw a car pull over, and I wouldn't have pulled over for me. Look, at this point in time, I'm 6'5" already at 21 years old, but I'm also 130 pounds. I look every bit of a dead-on junkie. I would not have stopped for me. But they did, and that, where are you going? I was, the only place I thought to go was my dad's, who happened to live further down that street. Even though I had a restraining order, I knew that he would get me gas so that I would leave him alone. And when I got in the car, this is where people don't get it. They talked to me. And when you're living the lifestyle I was living, you stop talking to people. You verbalize about the things you're doing together, how you're going to score next to be able to get high, but you don't actually have real honest communication. And they asked me questions. What's happening that you're in the situation you are? Are you going to like, do you have a place to go? All of these like prodding, we want to make sure for your well-being questions. And then when we got to my dad's house, I opened the door to get out, and the wife grabbed my arm and looked me in my eye and said, "Listen, we love you. You're going to get through this, and you have all the tools it takes to get yourself out of what you got yourself into." And still, even in that moment, I was just like, okay, please leave. I would like to continue going what I'm doing. And my dad went and got me gas, and so I had gas in my vehicle. But that night when I got back to Walmart, I I thought about it. And that was like the only thing that was going through my mind as I tried to sleep was that these people who didn't know me from Adam still had some amount of faith that I would be able to get through what I'm going through. So it was around that time somebody started talking to me about the rescue mission. And I didn't want to go. I just bluntly didn't want to go. I had the pride of thinking I'd still be able to figure out how to get myself out of what I had gotten myself into. And it was probably like 2 weeks after that, I was driving around and I had just done, just stupid little, well, I can't call them robberies. We would say we chalked someone. So I told this guy I have to meet the dealer. You have to go wait inside McDonald's. As soon as he walked inside McDonald's, I pulled out as fast as I could, took the money, went and bought a 30 pack of Coors Light, and just drove around and was drinking. And throughout the day, I had just gotten to the point where I was like, we're back to ridiculous again, like, what are we doing here? You have to do something. I had this decided that like taking my life wasn't an option, but I still wasn't fully ready to stop doing the stuff I was doing and to disband the life I was living. But I chose that night that I was going to go to the rescue mission, and I drove to downtown Youngstown, and I pulled into the parking lot at the rescue mission and pulled out of the parking lot at the rescue mission. I couldn't do it. I was just not ready. It was not something I still felt like I could do it myself. And so as I was leaving, I had to stop to get a pack of Newports. Those things are like $12 or $13 now. It's ridiculous. I used to smoke, they were $5 back in the day. Anyway, so I go to like the little corner store and I
It's
see
expensive. It's expensive these days to smoke yourself to death. And
it is.
I,
So
I'm gonna say this to the listeners is that I did the math on this on smoking. People don't realize if you have a child that's 18 months years of age and you smoke a carton of cigarettes until that child is 18 years of age, and you look at your return on investment, you've spent over $386,000 on smoking, and your child is going to suffer trying to get a college education. I'm just putting that out there because my father died from lung cancer. So I'm just putting that out there as Mike Kevin's version of a public service announcement, especially after training someone that owned a tobacco company. When I asked why his children didn't smoke, he said, because we put a disclaimer on there, people are just stupid. So just think about the next time you take a drag off a cigarette, the owner of the company doesn't think too highly of you, but they own an island. So I'm sorry for intervening. That just
no,
triggered with
it's a
them.
good interruption because I used to think about that when I got clean about how much money I could have had smoking. I was smoking 2 packs a day and it might have only been $10. And when you tell people that now, they don't get the understanding because money has, as it always does, what was $10 back then is not $10 now. It's $26, and that starts to feel like, well, you could go get a meal for $26 in some places. So when I end up there and I see this guy who used to live in the apartment complex that I had left. I was living there with my girlfriend, but we broke up because I was doing nothing in life. So surprisingly, no one wanted to be with me. Um, and he was like, "Hey, can you give me a ride to the south side? I need to go pick something up." I'm like, "Cool, yeah, let's do it. It gives me something to do, get my mind off of the fact that I couldn't take myself to the mission." So we go to the south side to a drive-through. Dude jumps in the car. They do a little exchange, whatever. He leaves. We're driving back to his place to the apartment in Austintown, and I'm like, "Hey, you want to twist that up while we're in the car, and we could just drive around and smoke?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, We just went and bought weed. He was like, no, no, I went and bought rocks. And I was like, oh, oh, okay, this has gone a completely different direction. And so, again, being bottomed out, but being a true drug addict where I just want to do everything, I go to this dude's house. Oh, by the way, I don't really know this guy. You know what I mean? But when
Hmm.
you're living this lifestyle, you just kind of don't care. And so, and I'm also obviously wasted because I've drank this 30 pack of beer by now. I'm done. So I go and I had a friend who was going through a crack addiction at this time or had just kind of gotten out of rehab from it, and I'm sitting in the this dude's house thinking I'm about to smoke crack, and I know what the most likely result of this is I'm going to like it so much that it's going to be a long time before I smoke crack. So I take a deep inhale and I get the whole treatment and they just go whoa, whoa, the whole everything everyone told me it would be. And I expected to have this insane high. And again, don't know if it was intervention or whatnot, but I was just sober. That's the only thing I was no longer drunk. I didn't feel any of the effects of alcohol, didn't feel any of the effects of crack. I just felt sober. And I actually got mad and left because I was like, I need to be inebriated to live. And I don't have any money. I have no way to go get more stuff to get drunk. Now I'm just mad. Well, I decide, well, I'm gonna just go try to sleep at Walmart, whatever. Well, on my way there, a cop got behind me and I had a busted tail light. You guessed it, from when I decided I needed to try to spin my car out. And he pulls me over. I had multiple DUIs and charges at this point where I had to have an SR22 bond. I will give you one guess as to whether or not I kept up with my SR22 bond.
What
I
is that?
didn't.
What is the SR20?
It's a special type. You're like a high risk driver. You have, I think that in Ohio it was like a 12-point system, and DUIs are 6 points. And so in order you can drive, I think once you get under 10 points, something like that, and you lose a point per charge per year. But when you have like a certain types of convictions on your record related to it, you have to like go through a special process with the insurance company. Basically, it just makes you like the highest risk of highest risk drivers. And so I knew I was done, but Kevin, I'm telling you, he pulled me over and I had no, even though I had been through this dozens of times before, every time I got pulled over, it was always like, oh man, like your heart's beating 100 miles a minute. I was just sitting there like, whatever, what's the worst? Like, this life is going poorly. There's nothing that can really, what could possibly happen? So as he's walking to my car, he shines the light in the back seat, starts to move it and shines it back. And I'm thinking like, well, do I have something I don't know about back there that he's just noticed? And when he comes to the front, he just, before he says, do you know why I pulled you over? Which is, what cops ask. He says, are you living in your car? And I was like, yes, I am. And he was like, well, I'm going to have to take your car from you tonight. And it's very clear you're living in here. So do you have another place you can go? And I sit there and think to myself, is there a place in Youngstown, Ohio, where a person who has no place to stay, who has no hope, can possibly go lay their head? How about the rescue mission to Mahoning Valley? And so he takes me to the rescue mission. Now, I'm on probation 15 times over. And what a joke that system was for me, because I would go get arrested. You have 6 months of probation. As soon as they put me on probation, I'm arrested again, back in front of the judge. I plead no contest. Well, we're not going to send you to jail, so you have a probation violation, which extends your probation 6 months. I must have had a dozen probation violation extensions. They would never send me to jail. And even when they
Now,
would, I would work weekends at jail. I could go for 2 days, come out, convince them that my job at the supermarket was enough to not have to warrant, I'll lose my job if I do this. But the whole system was a joke. But he could have made it bad for me because I had enough stuff going on. Pills under my seat, open bottles of vodka just rolling around on the floor. I have no license. I have no insurance. I have had charge on charge on charge on charge. He could have very easily said, "No, this is it. We're pushing for prison this time."
Now, I'm going to have to ask you a question. And the
Sure,
reason why I'm asking you this question because my viewing audience or my listening audience is crossover. And so this is a question from the seat that I sit in.
sure.
You are exercising a privilege that will not be provided to someone looks like me. Did you ever consider why you were able to get away with it? I mean, it could be
Yeah.
now or forever, and why someone like me, even at a first time offense, going through what you would do would get time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I absolutely in the moment knew what was happening because so first of all in the area I grew up in, we created a charge that was DWB and we called it driving while black because we knew in our community that you were likely to get stopped if your car was of a certain and you didn't look like you belonged, you were going to get stopped. I lived right down the street from a factory. Don't know how there was an industrial factory in the middle of a residential area, but I used to sit and get drunk in my garage, which I shouldn't have been doing, and yell at the cops because someone would be driving to go to work and they would just harass people endlessly. They would pull them out of their car, pull their stuff out of their car. I watched them take seats out of the car and throw them on our front lawn. And when they couldn't find anything, they would just get back in the car and go away. And this person's trying to put his, car back together. Actually, they would go sit right across the street because they wanted me to come out of the garage so that they could arrest me for being drunk in public because I was 16 years. I'm not stupid. I knew what they were trying to do. And then I'd go to court, Kevin. And like I said, "Oh, Nick, this is your fourth time being here this month for probation violations. What does Nick get?" "Well, just don't do it. You've got another 6 months added onto your probation. Go see your probation officer." And then I'll watch somebody for a similar charge, whether it be disorderly conduct or having a little bit of weed, who was black, go up in front of the judge, 30 days, boom. This was stuff that I witnessed, and I try to tell people this, and I started to understand like very quickly that I got a different type of justice than some other people might. But I will tell you this, even though I knew it, I used it to my advantage because, again, when you're an addict, you're not thinking like equity and all this stuff. You're just like, whatever I got to do to get ahead, if I know they're not going to punish me significantly enough, I'm going to just continue to do what I want to do because they've shown me that there's no consequences for my specific actions. So yeah, and I know when the cop came to me that night, he could have made a choice. And I don't know this person, and I'm not going to try to guess if I was a different color, if that situation would have worked out exactly the same way. But I definitely felt that interaction is one of those micro shifts I have because I know in that moment he could have done a lot worse for me than he did. He treated me with undue kindness for the situation that I was in. He never, ever, I mean, even seeing that there's vodka swirling on the floor, right? He never breathalyzed me, never asked me if I was drunk, never frisked me, never looked through the car or anything like that because I never got any charges other than driving without a license on that. And so he takes me to the rescue mission, and a short Italian man named Frank opens the door, and he's looking me up and down, just kind of like unapprovingly. And he asks me, "How old are you?" And I'm just kind of like, "I'm 21. Where are you from?" Again, reservedly kind of say, I'm from Canfield. And he asked me, "What are you doing in your life that coming from Canfield, Ohio, at 21 years old, you've ended up in a homeless shelter?" And man, that man holding that mirror up to my face and actually making me have to realize what I have been doing for all those years. We don't get to pick. I think my message is just broadly, we don't get to pick when the things change our lives. They just kind of happen, and you have to be willing to grab onto them when they're happening in the moment, recognizing it and saying, like, this is a real point where, as this man is telling me this, he's talking. I hear nothing of what he's saying because in my head, I am realizing this whole time You have used every excuse in the book because people have allowed you to. Your mom died. You know, your dad was abusive. You had to change schools, and it was really tough at your age because you went from a 12-person Catholic school to a 260-person, upper middle class area. It was just all of these things made life so hard on you. But I made the decision. I was behind the wheel. I did all of those things, and it wasn't going to be until I realized that I was the one to blame and it was my fault that could really help me change things. And so that was really the moment, that conversation specifically, plus the two circumstances that happened before that, where I was really like, okay, it's time to change. And I had a fire lit under me that day.
Now, before we go into the part of the story that led to your transformation, I want to have people have a way to get in touch with you because the second part of this story is very compelling and may help a lot of other people. I also want to make note that you cited there is a system that is designed for you, and there's a system that is designed for me or people that look like me. I mean, growing up, I always knew, but I've never heard um, someone that looks different from me acknowledge the fact that what we knew and what we teach our children and confirm it to be fact from personal experience. I know for some of my listeners, it's going to be hard to fathom how someone that came from such a successful family lifestyle, even though the tragedy hit personally home, that they can turn to drugs, especially crack cocaine, when you know, and fentanyl, then you know that, one time you could be addicted. And I know from being part of a support team that have lost kids that I have coached, family members to drug and alcoholic abuse. It's a hard lesson to learn, and some people don't learn it until it's too late. And people like myself get a chance to tell the story, but we never hear it from you. But Brother Nick, and I'm going to say Brother Nick because everyone loves you. You have a very powerful story living this day today. You've made a huge transformation. You become uber successful. So there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And I hopefully your message and your mindset inspires some people. But how did they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me. I have a website. You could go to nicholasvolinchak.com, but since that's way more difficult to spell than the microshift.com, that's a better way to do it. They both link to the same website. I'm on Instagram at Nick from CWE, and then on YouTube at the Microshift. And Kevin, I do want to kind of speak on what you said a little bit too, because I had friends that went down a similar path to what I did. And we as we've gotten older and we see how things are shifting in society and right now and we have a political atmosphere that's kind of raising the stakes of exactly what you're talking about and there being a two differing systems at place. I will talk to people through our experiences and they still don't I feel like they didn't see the same thing that I saw. And I think that it's easy to put blinders on when you're in that position because you don't want to feel like you're being treated differently than everyone else, even if it's the positive side of it, right? You still want to feel a little bit like, well, the justice system did what it was supposed to do. But the reality is those things happened. How I'm describing the situation is something that gets dealt with, you know, very routinely in America. And as especially as I worked at the mission afterwards and got to talk to so many people about their experiences, it was only more of a confirmation to me that it was because of the privilege that I was born into that I was able to be treated the way I was. Because had the shoes been reversed, I mean, I would have probably been in prison for some of the stuff I did. I'm lucky enough to have said to be able to say, as silly as this sounds, that I have multiple felonies, but I never got convicted because my attorney was always to work within the system to get them dropped down to misdemeanor charges. Because listen, if you give this kid a felony, it's going to mess up his whole life. That's not the same conversation that everybody gets to have. So I'm very aware, and I think it's my duty because of that to be willing to speak out for people who can't.
I'm going to say firsthand, thank you for being completely transparent. I'm going to thank you again for holding you personally accountable for your actions. And the reason why I think people are blind to see the facts or acknowledge their privilege is because they don't allow themselves to acknowledge and hold themselves accountable for not only what they experienced, but for the story that's being told to be true. There's always a what if or and or but or whatever the case may be, and it's hard to be held accountable. And the nice thing about it is that you have owned your own story, and I appreciate you coming on this show to share it. But what was the internal shift that led you to your current day transformation?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just realizing that the mentality that I lived within was not going to be something that is conducive to really living any kind of lifestyle. Because and I see it in a lot of successful people where you talk to them and talk through how they're living, what they're doing, and you're still like, oh, you are literally one foot drop away from being a complete bottom and you don't even know it. And so I think I was willing to take honest inventory and have real conversations with myself about what needed to take place. And then I think I had this weird bright light moment. So when I went to the mission, I was trying to do the right thing, mostly in words and not so much action. I came in, and these are the weird little things that really make you wonder. When I got there, I was told like this is the first point in really the longest time because many of these people had worked at the rescue mission for years prior to, working there or whatever. And they were telling me this is the first time we've seen this many people from like 18 to 25 years old at the rescue mission at one time. And that wasn't exactly the best thing for someone like me because I'm completely out of control and I'm coming down off of drugs and you're very like emotional, but you're very raw and especially the women when they were coming down from drugs, there is one thing that women really wanted to do. As you can imagine what that might be as a young male, I was more than there for what they needed at that time. And so it provided a real complicated situation because I want to do the right thing, but I also have all of these like external things surrounding me that are putting the temptation in front of me. And quite frankly and honestly, I was not strong enough to say no to them.
One
And
addiction leads to another
and
addiction.
it and I recognize and I'm upfront with everyone I talk to when subjects like this come up. I have a standing actually, this is Monday at 8 o'clock this morning. I talked to someone. It's a virtual psychiatrist that I talk to just because I know that I have an addictive personality. I have a performance addiction and it can manifest itself in ways you would never think it does. And so for a while there, I wouldn't say that I had like a sexual addiction, but it's just like when people are coming off drugs, misery loves company, and you kind of connect the only way young people coming through that experience together can. But I got taken out of that situation because one night I'm sitting in my room. Now, when you did the residential program at the rescue mission, one of the benefits was getting your own room. And Kevin, after a few days of being there, I had unfortunately already seen more penises than most women will see in their lives. And it's because it's a group shower situation. So I was like, having my own room and a shower that's not with 54 other people sounds like a terrific thing. So I'm going to do this. So I'm up in my room one night and don't ask me why I know this, but it was when Candy Shop by 50 Cent came out. I went up to the corner store and I would buy these Hot 97 mixtapes and listen to them while I was there. and someone knocks on my door. It's probably like 11:15, and they're like, "Oh, you have some friends here." And you get up because remember, like I said, I had burned all my bridges. There was no one that was sticking their necks out for me. I guess there was like some weird combination of hope that, like, okay, maybe somebody did actually come to see me at the rescue mission. That's awesome. Like, maybe I can get my friends back. I remember walking, and as soon as I'm reaching for the door, I had this like sense come over me, and this voice in the back of my head was like, "You idiot. It's 11:15. They're not going to let your friends come into the rescue mission and walk up to the room that you're living in because you've been there long enough to know that they all have to wait out front." And so as I'm turning the door, I just get this like it was honestly the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. And when I opened the door, there were just a hallway lined with US Marshals. And I was just like, well, here we are. And I will never forget the first US Marshal looks at me and he says, "Do you know why we're here?"
I kind of figured that question was coming.
Okay, so thankfully I'm a drug addict and I'm used to having to think quickly because I mean, if you have time to try to think and process this thing out, you're not going to say anything that is possibly going to work in your benefit. So I just think split second, what is the lowest crime that you've done? Right? I lived behind a school. I was selling Oxycontin on technically like school property. You know, there's a certain amount of space around. I have stolen I mean, we're talking larceny potential. There's all kinds of things that could have happened. And I was like, I stole my friend's PlayStation 2, and they were like, yep. And I was like, I've never been so happy to be being arrested for something because that was the best thing, sadly, I could have been arrested for. The only reason they sent 15 US Marshals, this was a point in time where in Youngstown, we had like this big sheriff strike. And all of the sheriffs had to work the jail. And even then, you had like a sheriff per floor, and the dormitories, there was like two on each side. So you had like where it used to be like four or maybe even six sheriffs working over the course of like two different pods. You had one. So it was like the sheriffs aren't around doing anything else. They just had to send whoever else. And they just happened to be doing this major drug bust ring. And they all happened to be at the police department. And when the warrant came through to pick me up at the rescue mission. So anyway, I go there and I'm completely lost again because I'm like, hey, I was at least kind of trying to do the right thing. I know a lot of the actions that I was taking at the mission were still like I wasn't doing drugs, I wasn't getting drunk, I wasn't doing that, but I was still not necessarily doing the things that I should be.
Right.
And I went to court almost immediately. And um, it's funny, the lawyer that I spent all this money on to defend me for years happens to be there for someone else and sees me and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, they just pulled me out of the rescue mission." He's like, "Oh, do you have an attorney? Did they give you one?" And I was like, "No, I don't have any money." He's like, "Oh, you've made me enough money up to this point. I'll gladly do it for you for free." So he literally just walked me up to the judge and got me released. Basically said, "Hey, he's trying to do things right at the rescue mission." And so I go back to jail and I'm like, awesome, like I'm getting released. I'll go back to the rescue mission. Hopefully all those girls are still there, whatever, whatever. And I don't get out. And then after 3 days, I don't get out. And then after 7 days, I don't get out. And if there's one thing about jail is that everyone there is an attorney. So I have some people telling me like, oh, they have to pay you $400 a day for every day that you're wrongfully imprisoned if you find out that they lost your paperwork or something. But really, all of the old heads in there were like, if you got released and you haven't got out of here yet, there's an indictment waiting for you. And so I was in a panic because I'm like, okay, if I get indicted, there's not dropping that down to a misdemeanor. You're going to prison.
Right.
And so I sit and wait, and every day I'm just have this crushing weight of feeling like everything around me is going to collapse in on me. Probably a month later, I'm playing basketball and I hear Volinchak. And I'm like, well, here it is. We're going to find out that I'm getting pulled to this or that or whatever the situation is. And they're like, you're released. We found your papers. And I was like, Lord, have mercy. And when I got out of there, I kid you not, the jail was probably a half a mile from the rescue mission. I ran like I've never run before back to the mission. But on the way down, okay, they put me in, and they didn't cuff me or anything. Like I'm getting transpoed down, and there's a guard there, and this dude is like one of the biggest guys. And listen, I was small at that time. I was still probably had gotten up to like 145, but I'm 6'5", so I'm typically like eye to eye at least with most of the biggest people I see. I was not eye to eye with this person, and he had muscles like I've never seen before. And I walked into the elevator, and I was just like, okay, God, you've seen what I can do with my life, and I have not been able to do anything but get myself to the point where I'm living at a homeless shelter and I'm completely down and out of it. Everybody tells me that you can do better. Well, prove it to me. Prove it to me and make my life better. And I look at this is audible. I'm not saying this in my head. I'm saying this out loud on the way down in the elevator. And this guard is just like, should we be putting him in the psych unit or what's going on? But that was it. I got down and I wanted to give God a chance to work in my life. And I feel like he did. It's really hard to say that in 2025. I really have a lot of conflict internally about it because I see how it's being politicized. And it makes me sick knowing the experience that I had and how it's been able to change my life in the way it has and see what the common person thinks of that word when you say it out loud right now. But that was kind of like the real big transformation for me where it was like, okay, I'm really going to start changing my life around.
Was this the micro shift?
I really don't. I mean, if you have a coming to God moment, I feel like that's another one of those, like, that's like your mom dying, ending up in a homeless shelter. For me, those micro shifts are like those small, seemingly like meaningless things that are just said in conversation that weigh on you days and weeks and months down the road. This was a pretty like immediate knew that this was an impactful thing that was going to change the way I was going to try to proceed with my life.
So what were the next steps for rebuilding your life? I mean, obviously this was um, one of the things. It's funny that you we positioned it this way a couple of days ago on my other podcast. We talk about quotes, and we said focus on the first step, not the stairwell.
Yeah. It's
And
it's it's really hard. Um when I got back, I'd say the first like 30 days, I was like, ordered, tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm going to do everything how I have to do it. And it's going to be like, I'm not going to say I was like a cadet in the service or anything like that, but I was like 15 minutes to do every chore that they had me doing. I was, if we had to do Bible study or something, I was there with my nose in the book 15 minutes ahead of time. And then after 30 days, I was like, man, I really miss just doing what I want to do when I want to do it. I'm not going to lie. It was like, I understand that you have to have structure, but like I think it was like a week and we had to do something and I was like, man, I want to watch TV. Like I don't haven't really gotten a chance to like relax and do whatever. And I remember thinking at the time like, dang, I really miss just being able to do what I want to do whenever I want to do it. And so it was a fight. Um, but I just kept reminding myself like there's one homeless shelter in this area. If you mess it up here, there's nowhere else to go. What are you going to do? Jump big city to big city to find different homeless shelters? And I just felt like I had too much that I could give. And I'm very self-aware, so I do remember thinking at the time like you can use this eventually to help other people, right? You have an uncommon story that you're able to tell. And so don't waste it because you want to just be able to do what you want to do, how and when you want to do it. So I would have to just look at things and really sometimes take it half an hour at a time and just talk to myself and be like, this isn't what you want to do, but sometimes the things we have to do aren't the things we want to do, and almost treating myself like a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. And there have been a lot of studies that say that like when you do drugs, you stop emotionally developing.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if people have trauma and don't deal with it if they stop emotionally developing either, because I feel like I was picking up at 8 years old and having to tell myself, no, Nick, you can't sit in front of the TV all day. You have to go do this and go do this and go do this, because if not, you risk losing the place that you're trying to live. And so I had to do little things like that and be willing to make myself uncomfortable to understand that you have to do hard things to be able to reap the rewards of your efforts. Nothing's
Exactly.
going to come cheap and free and easy, so you have to put in the hard work. So that's what I did. And I mean, I did the program for about a year, and then everybody came to the conclusion. I probably, if it was like a year-long program, I want to say really after like 6 months, they were all like, there's no more than he's going to get out of this. So I
Right.
had the opportunity to go to work and went and got a job outside of the mission. Even though I really wanted to work there, I worked in a laundromat. And one day I got back from the laundromat and they were like, "Hey, do you want to run our um we had like a facility that just handled all the donations, and then 2 days a week we did giveaways where the public would come in and shop and get the stuff they needed. Do you want to manage the warehouse?" And I was like, yeah. And then for about 10 years, I worked at the warehouse for maybe a year and a half, but I really missed the connection of working with the people like myself when they came in. And so I opted to give up a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 to work a completely inconsistent nights, weekends, midnights schedule. And I did that for 10 years, and it was like
Right.
a blessing to be able to do that.
Right. Let me pull back another layer because of listening to your story, especially after someone's hitting rock bottom. I've worked with some young people that have been in your situation, and coming towards the holidays, since you wore the shirt amongst men, mental health, mental illness, suicide rate goes up completely like crazy, especially with men. It's higher with Black men during the holidays because most people feel alone. I have always said the role of community and faith is probably the strongest avenue one can take in order to change. I want to find out, was there someone that came into your life personally, be it male or female, and be a priest or someone who reminded you that you weren't alone on this journey you were on, and then address how important is community in healing someone like you that was going through what you were doing.
Yes, those are both very good questions. And I will start with the last one first because I will definitely remember the answer to the first one. I will forget the second question. So, community is everything. And right now in this country, we've set ourselves up into a position where we don't we don't have a broad enough sense of community. we've we've done away with the things, the tools that we can put in our tool belt that help us be able to understand who other people are, because we say we're not going to talk race or religion or politics or anything like that with other people. Well, if you don't do that, you get in an echo chamber where everyone around you says and thinks the same way, and you stop being able to understand someone else's perspective. And that's why we end up having so much division. In fact, I would argue that we only should talk about those things. What sense is there for us to only come and talk about how the Browns might play through 3 or 4 quarterbacks this year, when a much more impactful thing, especially if we were to have differing political views, is for me to try to understand why you feel the way you do and vice versa. And you said it kind of earlier when you were talking about how my experience through the legal system was likely to be far different than someone like yourself having gone through and doing the same things. I would 100% agree. Your path would have been much more difficult and put you at such a disadvantage that I would even say it would be hard to actually come back from, right?
You're
But
exactly right. And that's why I asked. I didn't say it the way I wanted to. I wanted to say, privilege versus perspective. How do you reconcile the privilege and the hardships within a story like yours?
Right. And I think if we take that same mentality and kind of adapt it into how we're conversing with each other on a day-to-day basis, I think that I remember you hear especially a lot around election time, people say things like, "Well, I'm going to vote based on what's best for me and my family." Well, I have unfortunate news to break to you. There are more people in this universe, in this country, in this state, in this city than just you and your family. We have to be able to vote in such a way that we're voting on things that it doesn't just benefit me, but what benefits the greater good of our society. And okay, you know what? I'm an adult enough to be willing to say I might have to pay a little more taxes because I'm lucky enough. Remember that. I'm lucky enough. I don't deserve, I'm not owed the ability to make more money. It's not something that I should just expect that exists. But if I make a little bit more money than the average person, I'm fine with paying a little bit more so that someone can have a roof over their head. They don't have to worry about food. And maybe that is a little bit bias of me because those are obviously issues that directly impacted me. But at the same time, why would you not want to do that? Especially since I study from a book that tells me that's what I'm supposed to do, that we're supposed to love our neighbor, not love our neighbor if everything about them identifies and aligns exactly with what I believe. So community at this point in life couldn't be more important. We need to be looking towards the greater community. And again, I'll tell you a little bit about very, very short story. I love women. Very weird thing to say at this point in the conversation.
If any heterosexual man would to speak, we would always say we love women.
But
So
actually, that's not what I'm talking about in this specific case. I was lucky enough that when I lost my mother, I had my grandma Pat, my grandma Rose, my Aunt Jean, my Aunt Marlene, my Aunt Linda, my cousin Lisa, my Aunt Kathy. I had such a huge infrastructure of mothering around me that again, yes, I lost my mother and that's devastating, but I had no shortage of that community who was willing to step in and take up in the absence of my mother all of the things that she would have done. Now, was it at 100%? Well, of course not. They have children, they have jobs, they had things that they had to do. But for me, that shows what a community could and should be. It's people that they don't have to. They could have said, we're too busy. It's bad, but you'll get through it. But they selflessly said, no, I'm going to do extra time to make sure that this person who has seen a shortcoming in their life is able to try to be able to live with some type of normalcy. Why can't we do that in everything we do with each other? Isn't that what this is all about? I want to see us helping each other. I don't want to see, let me look at this person and think of all the ways we could be different. We're going to be different. In fact, variety is the spice of life. But in all the ways we can be different, we should at least be fundamentally the same in making sure we have the same level of care and the same level of opportunity, which is something that's certainly being missed at this moment.
all right, and I'm glad you said that, and thanks for correcting me. And I was actually trying to say all heterosexual men that have a mother that they love women because
Yes.
the mother's is the first layer of education because he teaches you to be emotional, and in order to understand change, it has to touch your heart before it hits your brain. Brain, you kick in endorphins, and you said. About getting high and everything else. The dopamines create that certain level of excitement. But a lot of times, the reason why people change or we do things that we shouldn't do is because of the connection of either that we have with a woman or a disconnection we have with a woman that makes us make those decisions. And I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, I do want to answer your first question because it's a great story and I'll keep it
okay.
short. I met this man named Tony Larisha. Now, Tony is a Youngstown legend. You can drive around Youngstown and the surrounding area and see his name plastered on so many different things. Tony was an enigmatic personality. I'm 6'5", as I've said multiple times. I don't know why I feel so strongly about having to say that, but I'm sitting down and I'm a real specimen if you can actually see me. So I want you to imagine it. Tony was probably 4'8". And I really wanted to get to know him because I thought at the time like he could be a great connection for me to try to meet people in the community to raise my stature and help me get out of the complacency that I was living in as I was going through college. I worked in the administration office of the Williamson College of Business Administration at YSU, and Tony had just donated a boatload of money, and one of his requests was that he was able to have a small office in the building. So Tony, whose office would be right next to where I worked, would come in and he would talk to all of us. And he started trying to figure us all out and hear our stories. And he's like, "Okay, Nick, tell me about you." And so I told him my story, and he was like, "This kid's coming in the office with me. He works for me now." So I would spend my time whenever he came in. I basically had carte blanche because who's going to tell the guy who's donating millions of dollars a year no, that you can't use our student? Well, he would go in there. I'd talk with him and have great conversations to get insight on life. Found out so many things about him personally. He'd be having me go. He worked at Merrill Lynch, and he would have me go in and executing trades of more money than I had ever seen. And he knew that I was a drug addict with a checkered past. We would walk up and down the halls of the university and just talk, endlessly talk, half an hour at the time. And one day we're walking up and down the halls and we see a professor who I had a couple classes with. It was the chair of the accounting department. And he stops him and he says, "Ray, did you know Nikki used to be a drug addict?" And I was just like, yeah, I used to be a drug addict, but it caught me off guard because while I'm not afraid to tell my story, this is the chair of the accounting department. I'm an accounting student. There are some things maybe I would rather him not necessarily know as I'm trying to pursue opportunities and degrees. Well, then this starts to become a commonplace thing while I'm walking with Tony, and he will just randomly stop anybody to say, "Did you know Nikki used to be a drug addict?" And then so finally, partially embarrassed, but also partially frustrated, I said, "Tony, like, dude, don't get me wrong. I'm totally appreciative for like everything that you've done for me, but like, why do you keep stopping and telling people that I'm a drug addict? Don't know if you're aware of this, but like, people don't look too fondly on drug addicts." And he looked at me because, he's very short. He looked way up at me and he said, "Because, Nikki, you've done more than they'll ever do, and you should be proud of that." And I was like, whoa. And that kind of opened me up to understanding that it isn't our past that has to define us. Everybody is capable of amazing things if they're just willing to accept the things that they can't change and use that to help the next person. And so when Tony said that to me, it really made me understand that he was more than just a guy who made a lot of money. He was more than just a guy who donated a lot of money within our community, but he was a guy who was larger than life in his understanding of how day-to-day human interaction took place and what it really meant to be successful. And as the days went on and I had further conversation, Tony would tell me some of the stuff that he knew that he should have never told me about people in our community who superficially have it all together. But he would tell me, "Nikki, you're already more successful than them. It's all up here. It's not about this. It's not about the car you're driving. It's all up here." And so for me, he was a guy who really embodied community and what it meant to not just use your pockets to help other people, but to use your time and energy.
Something that was, I would say, a drop to mic moment in my neighborhood. I would say in your world, this was powerful words. These were life changing. And I hope our listeners are listening. I don't want you just to hear Nick's story. And I did this on purpose. I allow the interview to run a lot longer than most podcasts because this is one of those things that you may have to come to and listen to in part one and part two. I didn't fast forward to his current success, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes to end the show. It's because we have a tendency to pay more attention to the glitter than actually the show. and to show us where the story is about to be told. We are all in positions in our life to do great things, but most of us are ever standing in the light of the position to do those great things. Nick, you have not only stood in the shadow and searched for the light, you have carried the light out of the shadows and you have passed it on to other people. And I just want to thank you.
Appreciate
So,
that.
give us a quick update to where you are right now, your personal life. You have someone that you share life with that enhances that light and keeps the candle burning, and you have a successful marketing business over in Ohio. Tell us how that is coming. Tell us how we get in touch with you, how people can actually hire you to speak and motivate. And I know from talking to you personally, you'll speak to one person, you'll talk to 10,000 people. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about your personal life. There's someone that knows you, that loves you for who you are, and that inspires you in your
Yeah.
life.
I talk to myself all the time too, so I don't even need an audience. I can be my own audience if I have to be. But no, surprisingly, someone was willing to put up with all my BS, and I was able to get married. It's my second marriage. The first one can be a couple podcasts and episodes in itself for navigating through trials like that. But we've been able to go on and build a family. We have a child, Primo. He's why I do it all, right? Like when he was born, something in me changed. I don't know if it's the fact that I had to realize that I'm like a full-blown adult now, but I see him every day and see how much he counts on and relies on us and how much we're able to form him. And I'm very cognizant of that and try to make sure that I'm always doing my best around him to make sure that he doesn't have to go through the same type of difficulties I did. Not to give him an easy life by any stretch of the imagination. He understands. He sees us working 12-hour, 16-hour days. He's not assumptive that we just have money and it showed up out of nowhere. But yeah, so I'm very blessed to have those things. I started after multiple business failures. My wife and I were able to start this marketing company, and that's been awesome. It's given us a lot of different opportunities. We actually were just able, I know when we talked kind of a couple weeks ago, we talked about how we kind of had like a common link with Damon John a little bit. And we were blessed enough that Damon actually came to speak at YSU a couple weeks ago. So we were able to like be with him and his entourage for like we were his entourage that day. And so it was really helpful for me as someone who's trying to transition into doing more speaking because I got to see how one of the best at what they do prepares, how they execute, what their pregame routine looks like, how they handle people. And I have been around him a couple of times now, and I can tell you that there's not really a what I see on screen is different than what I get. It's not that I've run into a lot of people, unfortunately, especially as I have a background in professional wrestling, and having worked with some people who seem like that they're the nicest person when they're out there in front of the crowd, but they're just the meanest, worst people behind the scenes. And I will always give Damon a ton of credit that he is really who he says he is. But it was great for me as I'm trying to undertake this speaking career to see all of this stuff. And Kevin, I think what it came down to, it's been well over 10 years, I guess probably 13 years since I worked at the rescue mission. And I had a hole that I didn't know what was missing, but I knew something was missing. And I think about a year ago, I came to the realization that I really got a lot of working out of working with people and seeing how my words and my story were able to impact what they did in their own life. And when I worked at the mission, I had a captive audience at doing that. Well, when I left there, I stopped doing it. And over time, I have lost that purpose part of my life. And while I am definitely, from a business perspective with the marketing thing, focused on the profit side of that and trying to grow a business that could help us expand our lifestyle and move into things like philanthropy, I've missed that purpose portion. And that's really where doing the speaking engagements come in. So, if anyone wants to book me, I'd be more than happy. Will entertain the hell out of you. The only slight problem is it might be difficult to get me to stop talking. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's a good chance it might be a little bit tough.
Well, you know something? I've enjoyed listening to your story. Hopefully, that our listeners and the people that will tune into this episode of Talking with Kevin and Son will be patient and listen to your story because it's like peeling back the layers on a piece of fruit. Every time you peel one layer, it reveals another part of the story until we get to the truth. And the nice thing about getting to your truth, it's just like having a puzzle with 1,000 pieces. You always end up looking for that one piece after you put 999 pieces together. You can't find that one piece. And I always say that one missing piece to your life's puzzle is actually you and you being honest with you. So, how has your definition of success changed since you become sober, successful, a father, a loving husband, an example to your community, and your reconnection with your faith? How has your success changed?
First of all, when I hear you say all those things about me, I have to laugh because I am the goofiest, love to have fun, most unserious person, but somehow I've been cast into a place where I'm like uh like a normal adult human being, and it just feels weird that this is where I'm at, and so to answer your question, um can you ask the question again? I actually forgot what the question was.
Okay, I'll summarize. How has your definition of success changed?
All right.
Now, now let me preface it the way that I'm thinking where the question came from. When I had spent my whole life growing up dirt poor,
Mm-hmm.
and when I made my first million, the first thing that I thought it was life changing or whatever. And what I realized that when I hit rock bottom, when someone had stolen all my personal investments and everything else, and I found myself living in a car, the one thing that changed me was my relationship and commitment to money. Although I needed to be successful, it was not my identity. Where my identity came from was my reconnection with my faith, and then my reconnection with people that had value to me personally, and the experience I had. My success is based on my experiences with the people that love me and the people that I'm allowed to love. It has nothing to do with my bank account, the home I own, the places I've gone, or whatever. My success is the difference that I make in everyone else's life. That's the reason why my purpose is hope, helping other people every single day. And the reason why I created this platform is connect people with stories like yours so people have hope. They don't feel like they're alone or they're at rock bottom. This podcast will be that comforting, warm blanket around someone when they're laying on the sidewalk in the cold. There will be that light in the dark when they can only see the dark. It will be that person that's sitting behind the steering with a gas foot on the pedal, rushing through life and hoping that the next curve they will lose control, only to find out that God's got you and he put you back on the road. That's the reason why I asked that question. So knowing that, if I were
Yeah.
to ask you to define your success and change, how would you
It
address that?
it's really not too different than what you said. I mean, 10 years ago, it would have been do this to make more money, try to start this to make more money, do this, come at this angle, try to make more money. And it was very much everything I did was about money because up to that point, I had never had it for myself. My dad had money, but I don't have my dad's money. When I went through the homeless shelter, I had no money. And then when I worked at the mission, I certainly had no money. Um, but once I started making money, you find that like money is a useful tool and it can buy you things that provide you momentary satisfaction. But at the end of the day, it was that hole. I still had that hole in me. And it has been, and really, it's a hole that got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse for 10 years. So for me, it was understanding that success and what I feel like success is going to be and how I handle it in life is going to be about how many lives I'm able to touch in such a way that after they hear something I said, whether it be a speech, a podcast, a short on YouTube, whatever it might be, they're able to change their perspective on how they view something in life. And it's probably going to be something that had a negative implication, and they used to look at it a poor way. And something I said is able to help them reframe and get past a struggle that they're working on. I think if I can do that and even help one person with one small little thing, I feel like I'm successful. I think we put too much into what is successful equation, and people usually look at vanity metrics. How many followers do I have on YouTube? How many Instagram people like me? How much engagement do I get? But who cares? What if 10 people watch a video and 2 people raise their hand and say, "This has fundamentally shifted the way I think, and I'm going to be a different person because of it." I'm going to jump up and down and continue to make the same kind of content in different ways, hoping that 10 people see it and 2 people each time are able to take something away from it.
But Nick, I'm going to tell you, I was thinking about this earlier and thinking about my team when I um, attached my sponsor, my new sponsor, the Borough, to this interview. I thought the first thing people are going to say is, "Why did you put us with this interview?" I think that JT, Chris, and my son will all know that this story is exactly the reason why they are sponsoring this episode of Talking with Kevin and Son. And with that said, real quick, if I had to ask you one ask, and someone can make that dream come true, and I was going to ask another question, but I'm not going to ask it because you answered it. And the reason why I'm asking this is because when I was setting up my podcast, everyone talked about, what you had just mentioned, to like subscribers and how many followers and who is your target audience. And I will say there's no real podcaster, unless you're talking about finance and whatever. Really, you don't have an audience until you get an audience, and then you find your purpose and explain your why. You just hope that your mission and your purpose both align. And I said, the success of my business and my life has been surrounding myself with like-minded people, just like you, that have gone through some stuff, that have identified with some stuff, that have held themselves accountable, and that had the mindset in order to make changes, not only to improve their life, but enhance other people's lives. And so my friends, they don't drive by an accident. They stop and help. And when I'd ask for people to follow and subscribe, I only want people inside that circle that want to make a difference. And there's been 7 people that have listened to the show that have answered the question I'm about to ask you, that has changed a total stranger's life. The last person was a guy that doesn't need any help, but he needs help. He has sickle cell anemia. His name is Kira Spratz Jr., better known as Steve Harvey's co-host on the morning show that he has. He wants to build a facility to help other people that has sickle cell. They have free medical care and stop being treated like they are drug seekers at our emergency rooms. So with that said, and knowing how I set this up, and I know you're a person with a good heart, and you didn't mention your wife's name, but she's going to kill you. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to be thankful for having a woman that has your back, and that beautiful child of yours. So feel free to speak her name into existence so she can be part of your dream and this life you have. If you have one ask, Mr. Nick, and someone can help you make that dream come true, what would that ask be?
Her name is Crystal, so she doesn't kill me. I will clip this and put it on repeat. I thought about saying something funny like have lunch with Larry David or be casted on an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Because in fairness, those are like those dreamy dreams that would be awesome if they could be fulfilled, to be able to look back on. I'm a guy who ran a professional wrestling company and grew up with such an immense love for professional wrestling. Even though becoming a wrestler didn't work out, even though running that company didn't work out, it's still something that's so unique that I'm able to look back on and draw so many memories from and be able to talk about in such a capacity that it always kind of shocks people, because you're not going to run into people who have done that. But genuinely, honestly, and earnestly, my one ask would just be to be given a stage to be able to tell this in front of 100, or 1,000 people. I'm not looking to fill, the United Center or anything like that yet. But I just want to be able to be given an opportunity, because I know that something I say can impact people to choose to live a better life. And especially as you mentioned, we're moving into the holidays where that disconnect and not feeling satisfaction out of your life can weigh on you, especially heavy at this time. I feel like, especially right now, it weighs heavily on me to really try to get myself out there and to be able to talk to people who I know are going to need help.
All right. Well, we share a lot of things in common. One, I love Christmas, and I'm going to tell you, take your family to Lake Placid, New York, stay in the
Okay.
Golden Arrow Hotel, ask for Jennifer, tell her that Kevin McLemore sent you. If you want to experience what the real season of Christmas feels like, this is the closest you're ever going to get to the North Pole. Go to
Okay.
Lake Placid, New York during Christmas. And if you can go up there the week of the 10th of December, that town transforms from a small village town that's a ski town to Christmas literally right before your eyes. It's an experience that you're never going to forget. You can't tell the people who have it, or people that have not. It's just beautiful. It's a wonderful place. Nick, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. I want to thank my listeners for listening. I know I ran long, and I really don't care if you don't have the patience to listen to it, but sometimes you have to sit and listen to a story to be told. I also want to thank the people that are in need that this podcast will help, and I ask you to look for someone that will hear your story and that's open to helping you. And if you're at a point that you're giving up hope, I'm asking you not to. So, Nick, is there anything you like to leave with our listeners before we sign off and I do the closing?
No, like we said before, you can find me at the microshift.com, on Instagram at Nick from CWE, on YouTube at the Microshift. And Kevin, it's been an honor to be able to chop it up with you for the last 7.5 hours and talk about my story. I appreciate you letting me talk. But yeah, it's been a good time, and I'm really excited and would gladly help you out with anything you need help with to help promote your message.
Well, this is not going to be the last time you're going to be on Talking with Kevin and Son. And I'm sure I would love to do something with you as far as maybe I should put together a host like they have, the Kings of Comedy.
Yeah,
We should put together a dream team and maybe tour the country, sharing our stories,
there you
some
go.
inspirational, share perspirational stories and so forth, and put on the stage. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we'll get a sponsor to pick up that tab too.
There you go.
So I'm going to say this, and this is the notes that I've taken, and this is my takeaway from Nick's story. Small steps matter. Microshifts leads to transformation. Pain comes with purpose. Hard comes before easy. You're never too far gone to write a new chapter in your life. Nick has graced us to be able to tell us his story, and it's tragic in the beginning, but there's a happy ending. And I always say that the three things when you see me sign my books, I said, live your life like it was the last day that you had on earth. I said, laugh like it was how you made your living. And then love like you're writing your own story. And Nick, believe it or not, this is a love story with a happy ending, and it's your story. So Nick is giving his website information is www.themicroshift.com. You can find him on Instagram, Nick from CWE. Hopefully, I got that right. He's on LinkedIn. He's also on YouTube. So, with that said, Nick, I want to thank you for sharing your story of hope and resilience. Our purpose here is helping other people every day. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm Kevin McLemore. I'm a show host, four-time published author, master level fitness professional, and also what some of my friends call me a mindset connector. So I would say this: stop selling your story, start connecting your story, and just care. And if you like what you heard, go to RMK Productions and network on our YouTube page. You can subscribe, follow if you like, or whatever. You saw my standards. My grandfather always said, when you get to a point in life that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are out. Thank you, Nick.